to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Should have known right away when it felt too good to be true. 'Cause you never said what you mean to say. So anyway, you look at it, I'm confused. You can't see where this is gonna lead. Reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. Come on, reach for me. I can't wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Reach for me. Got it all figured out. You decide what's best for you. 'Cause you built me up, so don't let me down. I can't make you do what you don't want to. You can see where this is gonna lead. Reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. Come on, reach for me. I can't wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Come on, reach for me. Don't wanna wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. Come on, reach for me. I can't wait another day without you. Take me to higher ground. We'll be safe and sound. Reach for me. Reach for me. Mr. Blackbird sitting in the tree, why don't you come down and sing to me about all the people that you see as you travel around the world? Oh, Mr. Blackbird sitting in the tree, why don't you come down and sing to me about all the people that you see as you travel around the world? Oh, Mr. Blackbird sitting in the tree, why don't you come down and sing to me about all the people that you see as you travel around the world? Oh, Mr. Blackbird sitting in the tree, why don't you come down and sing to me about all the people that you see as you travel around the world? Oh, Mr. Blackbird sitting in the tree, why don't you come down and sing to me about all the people that you see as you travel around the world?
Well, good evening and welcome to the May 28th City Council meeting. It seems a little weird actually having people out in the audience again. I'm going to have to remember how to act with the live audience here. And it's good to see you all and to see your interest in our council meetings tonight. Clerk, please call the council meeting to order.
Mayor Hardkey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember McClymans,
Here.
Councilmember Wong,
Here.
Councilmember Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Orlando.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, City Clerk. Our invocation tonight will be led by Pastor Victor Hardy of the Congregational Church of Chandler and our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Terry Rowe. Pastor.
Let us prepare our hearts and minds for prayer. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer that calls me from a world of care. Let us pray, dear Father. I come to you on this day with my heart heavy and my soul in distress. This world seems to want hate and grief. So I run to you, to your throne. I run with my heart heavy because once again I have to tell my African American young men to be careful. With all that we have been through, we find reasons for hate. Death continues to knock at our door, and we continue to open it. So I run to you, asking you to forgive us, asking you to comfort us. Let this meeting be the start of something great. Let us not go back to when we were before, but put us in a place of being better human beings. Let us remember those who have fallen, who have passed away, Black, Asian, white, Native, Hispanic. Though we cannot touch each other physically, let us touch each other with hope, with love, and with respect. So on this day, I call upon you with your love and with your grace. During this sweet hour of prayer, let those whom are in agreement say, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, council member. I would ask that you would also join me for a moment in silence. I believe yesterday the reported number of those who have lost their lives through the COVID-19 pandemic crested 100,000. So would you just join me in a moment of silence? Those whom we know, those whom we've heard of, those who are part of other families as well. Thank you. So council, several things tonight that we will be discussing. We've got some speaker cards as well. I would like to move item number 13, which is our budget to action, and we'll be discussing that at that time for why that's necessary. We do have, as I mentioned, a couple speaker cards, and I'm going to call them up in the order of our agenda here. So our first is Mo Wakefield on item number 3. Mo, if you'd please come up, state your name and address for the record, and you will set the timer for 3 minutes, please.
Mo Wakefield, 797 West Germain. What else do you need?
No, that's it. Just your address, please.
Okay.
You've got 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah. Well, here I am again, same old thing. Our neighborhood is at stake and is being chopped up bit by bit, bite by bite. No coherent overall plan. Anyone that has property out there and is in to make a quick buck, they take a bite out of us. We have a problem with the well and so forth. So I don't even know where to begin. I hope you can make heads and tails out of my written submission because it's just incredible that we're being treated this way. I'm without words. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor,
Thank you, sir.
Mayor,
Councilmember Orlando.
Mr. Wakefield. So, yeah, I read this is not much different when we talked about this a couple weeks ago. And I know I asked staff to come up here, even though you couldn't be here. And I asked them to summarize the 2 issues. And now you're telling me those have not been
Well, I didn't get any
rectified,
response,
or-
but it's very hard to communicate written
Right,
like
understand.
that. And I make my little spiel here, and then everybody gets to rebut it. As I understand it, I'm left out of the discussion. I don't feel like the neighborhood was ever really in it. No, you were very kind, you and Councilmember Rowe. According to my wife, you're kinder than I deserved, but so I appreciate it. But still, there's just the way this system works. No, I just don't think it's fair at all. Um, And, well,
Okay.
I don't even know how to begin to,
Okay, so all I want to know is, you had a couple of key issues that was still concerning in your mind. Do you want to at least repeat those and let us understand that so that I can understand? Because there's a lot of stuff here you wrote, and again, it's a novel. You did a great, you had meeting here for ADQ, you had a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, look at the size of this thing. But again, I got to crystallize this in a couple of sentences so that I could have staff come up here and at least address those one more time.
my real position is that, look, zoning is based on water management and how well is Chandler managing its water. And you go to one of these dog and pony show neighborhood meetings, and the people are there with a gung-ho, let's sell, look at all this water feature here, all these wonderful, it's going to be a water-rich entrance here. And they don't tell you, well, we got a city line out here that's supposed to be supplying recycled water, reclaimed water. We're not going to tell you about that. You're not going to hook up that. Your preliminary plat isn't going to show any connections to that. What we're going to give you is drinking water, the most expensive we got. And I cited the city websites. Oh no, we don't do. Our focus is on recycling. We preserve our. Well, we don't. We don't. These projects come along, and all that stuff is forgotten, if it was ever learned. We get a something that's it's for the it's to make a sale. They act like they're making a pitch, a sales pitch to sell their stuff, and all they're talking about their the wonderful water features. They have no clue. As to how much water that's going to take. Okay. And here we talk in the news and the weather and the water management people, well, drought preparation. What are we going to do in a drought? These folks don't know. Yeah. All they're going to do is use city water.
So it's not your well they're using though, right?
No, that problem got fixed. You went too far. You include the well, and I got word back from the city attorney that thing got fixed. I haven't seen it.
I wanted to make sure of that because I thought that was your major issue. In general, you're concerned about the water features and having used that water is what you're saying.
Yeah, well,
not your well. Okay, good.
Yeah, but it's really any old pretext to chop off a block of the Alma Ranchettes, chew it up, and add another street. I'm going to have a street right close to me. They're going to be using the same refuge lane. That when the city widened that road and designed that road, they designed it for the people who have driveways connecting to that road. And now we're being forced out. Right now when I go to leave my place, I got to sit there, wait for a break in the traffic, and make a lunge for that refuge lane. Well, now I'm going to have a street coming in there with untold number of cars. And if you connect to the Garrett Walker place next door, and that's still a worry, that hasn't really been settled, because I understand from past statements of your people that they can do that. Once the number of houses are fixed, they can change the roads anyway. And I've been telling my neighbors, look, the city is, in my other stuff, I've claimed to DEQ and all that your two sewer plants are dumping nitrates that are made our, how do we fix a well with a nitrate problem? Right. We were drinking sewage. But so now the city is going to put us on city water, but they're going to run a line down the alley to hook everybody up to. And once you bring city water in, all you've done is bring in more redevelopment. You're going to have someone else say, okay, we're next. We got two of these ranchettes. Now we're going to have a tattoo parlor or something, or a Hawaiian grass huts or something. That's going to be our development.
Okay. I understand. Okay. I understand.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Mr. Waif. I'm not trying to rush you. I just, we've had many conversations, and with the council members up here, and we understand your predicament, and we're trying to weigh that with the development of that area, and we're trying to weigh your concerns, and the two or three that I thought major ones you had, I believe we addressed, and that's, but the overall issue of development, and I understand that. Okay.
You have no comprehensive plan. You don't tell us who you're going to save, who you're going to take. It's just a free-for-all out there, and people don't know how to do it. I mean, for 30 years, we've had investors sitting on those properties, stripping them bare, not developing them, because they're waiting for the city to bring in the water so they can do their whatever the development they want. And so in the meantime, the neighborhood doesn't look too cool because it's being used to bankroll a future development. And since people can only buy up little chunks of ground there, the ranchettes, you're going to have little tiny narrow strips. You're going to be living in a box. You put up the walls to your little subdivision, and then you knock down the city. Rebuilt that area. When you widened the Germain, you put in nice sidewalks, streetlights, fire hydrants, privacy walls. This place here had the tallest wall out there. The owner got to pick. They had to declare that they weren't going to develop. Well, that declaration doesn't go very far because the city built them 2 walls on 2 ranchettes, and now they're going to knock them both down so that they can have a flowery, water-soaked.
Understand, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get you upset, Mr. Wakefield.
Oh, no.
I don't want to do that to you. You're a good man, so.
No.
So why don't we do this? We'll try to communicate as early as possible with you as we've done in the past, and just try to, get your whole neighborhood's influence and input onto this stuff. And, we're not trying to jam this down your throat, but we do have a legitimate use here. And maybe there's something we could do with the zoning in that area. I don't know. We could get with staff to work with us on that. But again, right now.
Well, what you did was you repealed the old city land use plan that said the high priority was preserving neighborhoods. Basically, you had to have a good cause to go in there and chomp up a neighborhood. Now, any old frivolous reason, well, yes, they want to go somewhere, and there's probably somebody that likes Italian architecture and wants this kind of stuff. But here Garrett Walker at least was a house builder. If they would give you plans, elevations, you'd see what the house was going to look like. These folks, they give you pie in the sky, and then your manual says, well, you must be substantial compliance with the developmental booklet. Well, that's garbage. That's absolute.
Okay.
That's so vague that it's meaningless. It's just meaningless.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, Mr. Wakefield, I understand what you're saying. Trust me, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Wakefield.
So council, that's item number 3 that it's on our consent agenda. Question from Vice Mayor.
So what was brought up, though, was the purple pipe. So I don't know who would address this, whether it be Derek or John or Greg. I thought in South Chandler, any new developments that were HOA with water feature and or grass areas, green areas, they would have an option for purple pipe. I don't know if that's depending upon size, if that's depending upon location, if there's purple pipe already run down the main. Is that not available for this location, or is that something that gets added on or granted on for future use?
Through the mayor, Vice Mayor Lopez, yeah, we have a reclaimed water master plan. So any land in the South Chandler that is a large HOA, lots of turf, we use the reclaimed water supply for those type of parcels. We have a supply and demand projection already, and so we really try and tie it to the larger parcels of turf, so we get a bigger bang for the buck, so to speak.
So for this one, it may not have met that threshold. I know because of some of the deals we've made with GRIC. I mean, we have been really, really good with our water allotments and allotting, like you just said, allotting a lot of our reclaimed reuse. We want to put that to where the larger consumers are, where this one is a fairly small one. So again, may not meet the threshold for sending purple pipe to them. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct, and it's also not for residential use, so it's just large turf areas is mainly where we use that.
Right, okay. Thank you. Thank you on that. And I just wanted to add on to that. I mean, in my opinion, again, that's why we passed a general plan, is to encompass a lot of the zoning. I mean, this is intended to be a residential area. It also comes to me, in my opinion, it's property rights. The owners of those ranchettes have the ability to sell, work with their neighbors and partners to get together and sell to developer. So in my opinion, again, nobody's being forced out. This is by their own dream if they wanted to make money off of their land and to get partner with a neighbor. So I do take exception that anybody's being forced out of their property for this. So thank you.
Council, any additional questions related to this? All right. Our next speaker card is item number 10, and I've got 3 names. I'm going to read them all. Is Rachel McAllister here? Wave your hand. Okay, so I have 2 speaker cards. Is Hannah McAllister here? Okay, so I have 1 speaker card. Ken McAllister? All right, Ken, I'm going to give you, again, 3 minutes to make presentation. I suspect there's going to be some questions, so we'll be longer than that. So you'll have opportunity to answer and say. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ken McAllister, 24206 South 124th Street, Chandler, 85249.
This is more spacious than your last address.
Yes, it is.
It's a P.O. box. So.
I have more than 3 minutes. I would request that my wife and daughter's speaker cards, that their time be added to mine so that I can convey all the information that I have.
I'll give you 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. On May 21st, I sent an email to all of you outlining some concerns with this project and the issues directly concerning direction from city staff. As of today, I received no response to that email until today at 10:25 via text message if I was okay with the modifications made to the Treeland project. The development packet in front of you regarding this parcel has some flaws in it. First off, there were only 4 letters of concern listed in this packet. I counted 7 different emails that I sent to Lauren Schumann about this project, and not one of them made it into your packet. How many others were sent to her that did not make it to your attention in this packet? That's a question that needs to be answered. During this process regarding the irrigation ditch on 124th, I had several conversations with Mr. Ray and finally, after much persistence, Mr. Ray and Mary Kay have decided to take the responsibility for this irrigation ditch. And I quote from the P&Z meeting, "At the 40-minute, 20-second mark, Mary Kay and the HOA will take responsibility of maintenance of the water delivery system, whether it be above ground, underground, or in current form." This was to be noted on the document to council, which this language is not in there. Only a side note that the developer has contacted the resident and that maintenance will be provided by the Treeland subdivision. This verbiage is also to be added to the subsequent CC&Rs along with the recording, and there will be a dedicated easement and recorded on the plat. 124th Street deferment, 124th deferment until deemed necessary. What does this mean? And when it is decided that this is going to be done in a bubble by staff, the irrigation ditch has already been noted that it is a private property matter and that the city has no role in deciding whether it is to be done with a ditch or in a pipe. So if and when 124th is developed or anything is done with the ditch, the approval has to come from the users of the ditch per the city. The roads for this proposed development transitioned into county roads, 122nd and 124th. In the email that I sent to you, I went through and did some Google screenshots along with what is to be developed and what is not to be developed. The red is what is going to be developed, and the black, or I had it in green before, but it's hard to see by this picture, is undeveloped roads. So,
excuse me 1 second.
Yes.
Can we get that on the, so we could see that, please? Keep going, but
can you see it now?
I think it's coming.
Yeah. Okay, so Treeland property, let me give you a first larger overlay. The Treeland division is here in this area. The slides that I'm going to show you next are this short section here. So the development, this has already been developed by the adjoining subdivision. This would then get developed by the Treeland property. This is where the proposed ingress egress on 122nd is going to happen. All of this will stay undeveloped. This is all undeveloped. This is a short little small section of pavement which then goes on to Via de Palmas. Then south on 122nd, all of this is undeveloped, except for down on the west property line. On 124th, if and when 124th ever does get developed, currently right now with the tree land, it is just this section here. If the east side of the property ever gets sold, then this section here would then get developed. There would still be a small section that would not get developed. The problem with the development of 124th, and still is a concern even though it has been deferred, is that it dead ends and runs right into this property here. There is no transition onto the section of road that is, or street that is currently being used. I spent many hours talking on the phone with county, with Jen Pokorski, who is the county planning director. She then sent me to Bill Leal, who is with Maricopa Counties with McDOT. McDOT has no plans on doing any development on these roads. No current plans and no future plans. They're not going to be developed. With this not being developed, what we would like, and since I'm out of time,
Thank you, Ken.
we would like that these roads be a dead-end road. This is looking down 124th currently. Notice that it says dead end. We would like that to be a true dead-end street. Same thing with 122nd. We would like no ingress egress on 122nd. And I have examples that I shared with you via that email.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to address any of the things that, from the city perspective? And
Wait, can I ask him a question real quick? Just ask him what a dead end means.
yeah, what does a dead end mean to you in this case? Go
So
ahead.
that means
Vice
no traffic, so even the residents that are down that road would not be able to go through it?
Dead end means that it's a dead-end street. It doesn't go anywhere. It goes down and it stops. That's what 124th was originally established to be, was a dead-end street, not a through street. Hence the sign that's been there for years.
So they're not actually, I don't believe he's asking to do any change, it's just a sign.
Well, no, this is the current sign that's there.
Correct, okay.
What I am asking is that when 124th becomes developed, if it ever does, that be a true dead-end street, that it doesn't continue to go through.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
Questions for me, maybe?
We might come back to you.
Mayor, council members, did you want me to hit just the street questions or?
Just
I think you
specific
identified about
related
4 things.
questions that were raised here.
Sure. As you can tell, I am not Lauren. Lauren and her husband Ramon are presently actively welcoming their first child into this world. So third string, me, that's who you got tonight. So in terms of the emails, I'm not sure. I know that we had, we actively put whatever we get from correspondence in, but I don't have an answer to something that you'd sent in that is not there. But I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards to find out kind of where those things went. In terms of the ditch maintenance on the ditch that's on 124th, the current one, since it's a private ditch, it is not something that we can, by condition, exact out that maintenance obligation. We can if it's right of way and if public utility and things like that. He is correct in that the applicant did indicate that they would be putting into the HOA CCNRs because it is something that the HOA would be maintaining. Timing on 124th, when through the public hearing process and through the neighborhood outreach side of it, that timing, the question of why do we need this section of 124th? 124th is on the east, 122nd is on the west. The current subdivision proposal doesn't touch 124th at all. It doesn't access it. Just simply would be a road basically to nowhere. And the question was, do we have to build that now? We went back and we discussed it with traffic engineering and development services director, and it was a valid question and an appropriate thing to defer. So the city's agreed that we will defer 124th Street. So the question comes up, when is it appropriate to build it? And it would be when that eastern property comes in, because then we can get the full street improvement. Mr. McAllister is correct in that the tree land piece and then that eastern property, there's going to be this small, little bit of a dogleg that's missing. And while it's a little bit irregular, it's not totally uncommon in Chandler, as we've got these county islands that slowly kind of are piece by piece coming in. If we have a half street right away that comes all the way down, let's say 124th builds, and it kind of crashes into a property line, we end up improving the roadway all the way down to that property edge, and then through striping, you'll see those kind of transition stripes, and we do it, and it is definitely a case by case because each situation is slightly geometrically different. But our civil engineers are very used to kind of figuring out that transition. So whether we get the piece on the east with 124th and we build it all the way down, or maybe it's terminated there and that future piece is deferred until the adjacent piece goes, all to be figured out when the geometry gets looked at to make sure we can still make a safe roadway transition. For the timing on 122nd, because the proposed subdivision does access 122nd, it's necessary to improve that down to that southern end, and kind of like the mirror image of what's happening on 124th, there's a little bit more on 122nd that this would be doing versus what Orchard Heights has already built. So there's a little bit of that offset. But again, it'll all be, we work to figure out the transitions to get traffic smoothly and safely kind of transition from one side back and forth to the other. So we're very used to doing that. I think that's what I had written down. If there was one other, I believe you had a question about subdivisions that existing subdivisions that only access just the arterial street. As a couple examples, I know at least at Planning Commission, Mr. McAllister had identified a couple of subdivisions down in that area, I think down on Riggs, that only had one single point of access, and the request was, can we not have this subdivision access 122nd? From a larger traffic plan and a kind of a master plan sense, ideologically, Chandler has always wanted to minimize the number of connections onto the arterial roadway, and you have kind of traffic come to collector roads, and then access to the arterial, so you don't have so many people trying to kind of jet across traffic or pulling out. It's just from a traffic safety standpoint. For the larger circulation system, it makes total sense that this subdivision has access to 122nd, because it'll be a full movement access point right there, versus their eastern access on Chandler Heights is a right in, right out. If we only had that single point and people needed to head west, they would turn right and then flip a U-turn, all of which are movements that are not as safe as sitting at a proper intersection like 122nd. I think those were the questions. So
Okay.
if there's something else, I'd be happy to answer it.
Yeah, just hang in there close.
Sure.
Council, do you have any further questions for Mr. McAllister? I thought I heard one down here. Councilmember McClymons.
For you, sir, when we spoke on the phone and we talked about the challenges with dead end, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Okay, dead end, that was the last one, and I left it off the off the list. So from a dead end standpoint, we've gone back and we've looked at all the plats that kind of surround 122nd and 124th, basically all the way down to, I think, Vita Palmas. There's no county right-of-way on 124th or 122nd. It's all private property. The majority of them have roadway easements that are dedicated for public use, but they're not dedicated to the county for public right-of-way that the county maintains. So it's still an access easement that exists on that property for kind of public benefit, but it's still underlying owned by those adjacent property owners. So there's a bunch of different property owners that own that property. Those access easements historically have always been 124th and 122nd. Those access easements have gone all the way up to Chandler Heights. So when we take that, bring that property into the city of Chandler as right-of-way, we can't block that off because there's been a historic right and a historic path that people have traveled. We can't block that off from a kind of a legal standpoint. Now, what's further down inside the county, where the county owners have their access easements over it, if they're successful at getting all the people that use that within the county to do that, that's between the private property action. But from the city's right-of-way, we can't just dead end that. We can place signs, either kind of unimproved signs or dead end signs to deter people from doing that. But we can't stop the folks from, we wouldn't want to stop the folks coming from the south to get to Chandler Heights on that improved road.
So Kevin, with any signage, would our process, again, if it's not on the right of way of city, if it's on their roads further beyond, they could put their own signs up saying whatever. But if it was there at city right of way, would we want to make sure that the neighbors actually wanted that, or how would that work as opposed to Mr. McAllister's neighbors putting it where they own the road totally as opposed to us having access? What would that look like?
Probably something I'd want to ask Dana, our traffic engineer, kind of specifics of that. But I know at least on 124th, there is that dead end sign already today. But it's county easement that is currently there today. So I'd really want to defer that to Dana.
Okay. I guess perhaps my question, Dana, is there any problem with putting a dead end sign at the edging there, or would that have to go further back from a city perspective?
We could put a dead end sign just like the one that they had, that they showed here, Mr. McAllister showed, that is on 124th. We could do something similar on 122nd as well.
Okay. We just would not restrict traffic, but we could put a sign there. Very good.
Correct,
Okay.
Mary. Yeah, we wouldn't want to put a barricade or anything at the end of our roadway.
I understand. Thank you. Council, any additional questions?
Mayor. Yeah.
Did I see here first, or?
Sure.
Okay, let me.
Mr.
Councilmember Stewart.
McAllister, Mark, hi. You had mentioned something in your email that I read about you were concerned about pass-through traffic, that you thought people would use the road to go to Riggs, et cetera. Would
No.
that no?
Oh, on 124th, yes, all the way to Riggs, and that currently happens today.
Okay, but that's been that way for a long time. Are you asking for that to possibly stop?
So, yes and no. Yes, I am asking that for the dead ends, for a blockade to be put in place so that there is no through traffic, because once these roads are developed, it's going to increase the through traffic up right in front of our houses that are dirt roads.
Okay. Kevin, is that, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that that's not possible because it goes into county and that there is traffic that's already flowing there, so we can't change that? Is that what I just heard you say?
We become legally at risk if we block off a historic path, a historic right that somebody's had to go through there. We take it in a city right of way and then block it off. We're blocking off a right that somebody has had for.
Okay, so then Mr. McAllister would need to work with the county and neighbors in order to get that blocked off. Can we help coach him on how to navigate that so that we can, if that's something they'd like to do, we can get that done?
In terms of helping them coach how to get through kind of county conversations and
to get through the red tape of government in order to hopefully make that happen if that's what they so choose to do. If the neighbors all, circle the wagons around this and they want this blocked, can we at least guide them in the right direction?
I don't know I don't know at what level we could help coach, but we could get them in touch with the correct people on the account.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr.
Sorry to interject,
McAllister.
but I've already done that legwork, and I already know what needs to be done in order to have the residents down there that have those right of ways and able to do that if the city was not going to do.
I think that would be a private project for the reasons of liability. And to me, that's a right that, again, if you're able to convince all your neighbors that is a good item, that's an option I believe you have. So, Councilmember Orlando.
Yeah, so just make sure, city attorney, we had a discussion here to make sure that we have signage up the best we could for, does that need to be put, is that okay to be put in the record right now, or do we have to make a stipulation?
Mayor, if I may, Councilmember Orlando, I think that staff has marching orders on that, but again, we can only control city right of way. Once it goes into the easements, that's
Right.
a different issue.
I just want to make sure we're giving them a sense of security that we're going to deliver on what we said we're going to do. I guess that's my question.
I think if the council, I'm getting the read that all the council members agree that putting up that signage is appropriate.
Okay, perfect. So it takes care of that. So let's go back to your first statement about the maintenance of the well, or the waterway.
Irrigation ditch.
Irrigation dish, thank you. I was trying to find it here. So you said there's nothing in writing that, in your mind, are you secure that there's not enough there to have them implement this? That's my question.
So I had asked Mr. Ray a while back to have in writing to us that that was going to take place. I have not seen that come into play yet. The only thing that stipulates it in the document that is before you tonight is that the developer has contacted the resident to convey that the irrigation ditch will be addressed in accordance with Arizona law and/or any agreement reached between the affected parties, and the future maintenance of the ditch will be provided by the tree land subdivision. That's all the verbiage that I have.
Excuse me, Councilmember. Mr. Ray, would you please, would you have some clarity with that in terms of this? That could help
Thank
Mr.
you, Mayor.
McAllister.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Brendan Ray, 702 East Osborne, here representing Mara Kay. Specifically with the question of documentation, Mr. McAllister, I believe, misremembers the email that I sent him, where I did confirm clearly in writing that Mara Kay would be responsible for the maintenance of that irrigation facility, whether it's above ground or underground, as well as that there would be an easement on the plat that would record that easement for the irrigation line for the benefit of the residents. So that writing has been provided to him in email. As he mentioned that, I was frantically trying to search my email to give you an exact date and time, and if I need to provide that to this group, I'm more than happy to do so. But as staff has indicated, and I've been part of some of the discussions, but no, there's been a number of discussions relative to irrigation lines in the city, and that is a private matter. And so I know that in terms of a stipulation, I'll defer to the city attorney, but I've always understood that private irrigation lines can't be stipulated to. But to answer the question, yes,
the
we have
maintenance key
provided.
of it, yeah, the maintenance key of it. I know we went back and forth on cover, not cover, things like that, but the maintenance, if you, so city attorney, I'll ask you again, do we need to make a stipulation, or is this a public hearing with a commitment by the applicant that the CC&Rs will cover the maintenance of this activity?
And Mayor, again, if I may, Councilmember Orlando, again, you have the commitment from the developer. Staff has the direction from the developer. It really is a private matter, but it will, staff, I'm sure, will ensure that it's noted on the plat accordingly.
Okay, then we'll get the final plat soon, so, okay.
For the record, Mayor, I did find that email. That was sent to Mr. McAllister May 4th at 11:19, and there's a series of emails correspondingly in that chain that specifically focus on the irrigation line, maintenance and easement and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Could I have Mr. Ray read that email, the verbiage that he sent to me?
I don't think it's necessary for the record if that's already been communicated.
Yeah, it's already been communicated, Ken. I mean, we could sit here and say email versus email, but that's why I asked the city attorney. We've got clear direction. He's committed, he's going to do that. Mark Kay's in the back of the room. We got a final adoption on this, final plat that we'll check. If it's not there, then of course we'll discuss it more, but I'm assuming it's going to be there.
And that's what I wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure that was conveyed, that was going to happen. As you know, emails are hard to stand up in court, whereas a documented letter on letterhead is a lot easier to produce.
Council, any additional questions?
Thank you, Mayor.
For Mr. McAllister? All right, thank you.
One last comment, if I may. I'm not against this project. I think it's a great project, and it will bring a lot more people to Chandler. I'm just against a couple things that are happening with roadways. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. All right, Council, that's all the comments for our study session. I do have a couple items that have been called in for briefings. Item number 15, Councilmember Orlando.
This is a really good story. I asked the police chief to give us a couple-minute presentation so the public knows what we're doing here in the interest of safety and coordination with our neighboring area.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. To answer your question, Councilmember Orlando, this is an intergovernmental agreement with the FBI to form a task force that would consist of members of Chandler Police Department, the FBI, and officers in the Gila River Indian Police Department. And their job would be to investigate violent crime, serious crime that have a cross-border nexus between Chandler and the reservation. This task force would be a true force multiplier and would help us navigate through some of the complexities that are involved with cross-jurisdictional issues when it comes to dealing with crime on the, at a tribal community. So a footprint, an example of this task force already exists for the last 5 years. There's been a very similar task force involving the FBI, Mesa Police Department, and the Salt River Police Department. And they've seen great success in reducing violent crimes, not only on the reservation, but also in the city of Mesa. So this is something that we're excited about. These are resources that we can draw from that we haven't had access to before, and we anticipate having a great impact on reducing crime in our community.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. It's great deal. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Additional item called in by Councilmember Orlando, item number 16.
Yeah, Mayor, a nice discussion today with Ms. Lang, and I just wanted to reiterate what we're doing here with particularly the pension funding. I understand the 10 to 15%. We could talk more about that some other time, but want to make sure that's clearly articulated. I know we've had the one discussion, the work session months ago. It seems like forever. And I know we've discussed this, but I want to make sure we're articulating publicly what we're doing here and why we're doing it. And then we'll take my next question after that.
Okay. Through the Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, the item on the agenda tonight is Resolution 5375, and it does include an update to the pension funding policy. This is now an annual requirement that we bring forward based on House Bill 2097 that requires us to bring forward the pension funding policy with any updates to the plan. In this year's update, there was significant changes to the plan in regards to when it can be paid down. So the discussion that Councilmember Orlando, you were referring to, was at our second budget workshop, March 23rd, where we got into some detail on options for funding the public safety retirement pension. And this has been a discussion dating all the way back to 2015. And it was in that year that Council actually approved a pay down plan, that the plan was formulated, and it has been an area of focus for our Mayor and Council, with the goal, of course, in securing our sworn officers' future retirements. So it is common knowledge that our public safety retirement system is underfunded. It is separate for every single city, so Chandler's liability is ours alone, and it's based on our demographics of our officers and firefighters in our plan. It has been a plan going along since 2015 to pay down the unfunded liability for the city of Chandler by 2027. Based on some pretty significant discussions that have taken place with the Public Safety Retirement Board, there's been numerous board meetings, there's been training sessions throughout this past year, and many cities across the valley have been part of those education sessions. They have a new actuary for public safety retirement, and there's been some pretty big corrections that are being communicated to communities that are going to take place in our next actuarial update. In addition to that, the new actuary has, based on really pleas from cities, has created what they're calling a modeler that was released this year for the first time. It would allow us to actually quantify changes to the public safety actuarial report. So they tell us they're going to potentially make 3 fairly significant changes, and we can actually put in those numbers and tell what it's going to cost. So this year we did that for the first time. We learned how to use the modeler, we put those numbers in, and we realized pretty quickly that based on the changes that we anticipate the board to make in the upcoming actuarial report, there is not, financially, there's not a way we can meet a pay down plan by 2027. The conversation at the work session then went into what the commitment to continue to pay additional over and above our employer contribution on an annual basis. And staff brought forward a recommendation to continue making additional payments with the analysis showing that if we continue to make that in the early years, those additional payments, it will actually save the city over the next 17 years up to $113 million in contributions. So by doing those additional payments, we can, in the long run, save ongoing dollars year over year over year. We are required we are amortized over 17 years. We're required to have this paid off by 2036. So we ran the scenario in the modeler with the additional payments, and council, through the discussions that evening, council did agree to retain the payment plan of making additional payments by achieving long-term ongoing savings for the city. And this is all on the premise that the PSPRS board will make those corrections to the actuarial report. So with all of that discussion that has taken place, we have now articulated that in our updated pension funding policy, and it did change the pay down from 2027 to 2036 with a much more significant savings in ongoing payments as the years progress.
So in 2036 is the maximum time you got to pay this off anyway,
That
correct?
is correct.
So the reason why we extended it is to do what again? I understand if we accelerate the payments, I get that. We may never make the 2036. We could actually pay it earlier.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, the reason we extended it is that financially, the city would have to use a significant portion of our one-time general fund balance, which would dip into our required minimum reserve for the city of Chandler and put us in a position and make us vulnerable in other areas. So we really had to cap how much we felt we could reasonably overpay of our existing one-time dollars in order to achieve savings on our ongoing contributions on an annual basis. But if we were to continue with the plan being paying it down by 2027, we would deplete our general fund one-time dollars.
You're trying to put a max on the additional payments is what you're saying?
Yes.
Got it.
That's
okay.
correct.
So, so the only other question I have, Mayor, and again, just as a request more than anything else, is obviously this affects, I don't know, 500 or 600, 700 employees in the city. And I just hope that we would in the future articulate these changes with both the leadership and also with the organizations that are involved with this, so the employees know what's happening probably prior to getting to the council if there's some discussion going on. So, you know, I just asked us to articulate this a little bit earlier than, you know, because maybe some folks didn't make that workshop, maybe some folks, it was March 23rd, I think they were out in the streets worrying about COVID and patrolling streets. And so I would just hope we would, like I said, articulate any of these changes, which are, again, important to all those individuals, and that we're actually giving them a, that we're, you know, we're still committed to pay this down. So, thank you.
And I do know there's a window of time of when we actually know this, because when we were starting our budget sessions, obviously, we didn't have any of that information. But I think we are committed to, as we have information, to share this with our employees that are affected. So, Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Dawn, this seems like it's a bit of a moving target.
Yes.
And we keep trying to nail it down, and it does create frustration because it's a great deal of money. And we're spending that annually. But Chandler, fortunately, is in a position to be, historically anyway, and up till now, be able to do this. So are other cities, are there a few examples of other cities and approaches that they're taking? Is there anything we can learn from them, or are they passing taxes, or what are they doing?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rowe, that's an excellent question. I think I don't think every city is literally dealing with this issue. We are all in this together. We've been attending, I see a lot of my cohorts at board meetings and other training around PSPRS, just continually trying to get those updates. What we're hearing is we were probably one of the first cities to actually put a pay down plan together and start talking about it and focusing on this issue, which was great, and it's a great story to tell. But as of more recently, more and more cities were starting to hear about, and especially with this requirement to have a written pension funding policy, we're hearing about more and more cities actually identifying one-time dollars to put towards this effort and try to pay it down early. But unfortunately, I think it's a smaller portion of the cities because it is a large undertaking. But did that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, examples would be, I think, there's a small city up north, I think, was it Prescott? Prescott, thank you, that actually passed a tax that's dedicated to making payments towards the unfunded liability, and their entire citizenry approved that. That's the only example of a tax being approved. Otherwise, other cities that I'm aware of are using one-time dollars out of their general fund.
Mayor.
That is correct, yes.
I'm going to ask a question that might
sir.
make me roll in my grave, but did Councilmember Rowe suggest that we raise a tax? Did I? That would be an unusual source for that request, so. Vice Mayor.
So, Don, we had a plan. I remember when we instituted this plan, it was supposed to be an 11-year, I think it was an 11-year payout.
Yes.
Now we're going to 23, whatever it is, from when we started this, again, 2007, I think, being when a lot of this first was exposed. Kept on moving the goalposts, right? Because our payoff started off in around 100 million, then it went to 160, went 180, and they kept on moving it. But it seemed like that payoff date, that required amortization date, never moved, even though the liability seemed to be going up. Is that a correct assessment?
Through the mayor, Vice Mayor Lopez, that is absolutely correct. We had a one-time option to either take a 30-year amortization or a 20-year, and the city of Chandler chose the 20-year, and we're currently at the 17-year mark. So 2036 is absolutely the date we have to work towards paying this down. That is correct.
And so even those cities that took a 30-year, I mean, they're a few years into it, and again, some
Their number continues to go up.
Some of them have just doubled, and now they're having to make deeper payments. And
is
again, this does frustrate me, and I think the frustration of our citizens out there also, that this isn't a situation that we got ourselves into, nor is a situation that the existing PSPRS board did. Again, there were previous decisions that were made, and amortization, or not amortization, was the modeling that was done that was not necessarily accurate, and now a lot of this is washing out. But our hope is, continually, right, that we're closer to an accurate model, so that in a year or 2 years, they're not moving the goalposts again. We feel we're getting that credibility or comfort with the new PSPRS board?
Through the mayor, Vice Mayor Lopez, I feel like it's getting closer with their new actuary, new eyes on this, new analysis. The corrections that they're recommending make a lot of sense. And I think that once those corrections get made, we're going to see in our actuarial report a much more realistic number based on our own demographics in the city of Chandler and every other city as well. It'll be based on what's happening in our own city, which, I mean, that's where we want to go. The only wild card there will be then what really happens with investments, because that could still make the unfunded go up or down depending on what happens in that environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Well, I think
Great presentation, Don. Thank you. I think, this plan is already in the oven. We're getting ready to pull it out. But everything that just happened with the $4.5 trillion influx of cash into the market changes the dynamic of what it means to pay back today versus what it means to pay back after we've absorbed that, I guess you want to call it deflation or inflation of that cash. Has that been factored into this? And I know it all just happened recently, but to me, it just makes, in 2008, there was a huge influx of cash. And now in 2020, there is a big influx of cash. And so while we're trying to pay down PSPRS in today's dollars, those dollars, if the trend continues, will be worth considerably less as we extend payments. And I think we're finding out that the federal government will print money as needed. And so while we're working in a real budget with real dollars, with real taxpayer money, does it make sense to extend the payments and still honor our commitment and make sure that we are taking care of the folks that are that have served and that will serve, and the new folks that are coming on board to make sure they're taken care of as well? But if we keep paying this down with today's real dollars, and then later on inflation has changed those dollars and they're 20% less, would it make more sense for us to wait?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, our liability is not going to go away no matter how much money the federal government pushes into the market. Our liability is our own in the city of Chandler. And if you can make payments early on, the modeler, it absolutely positively has a positive impact on our overall required contribution that we're putting in on an annual basis. Not only is it going to gradually bring down the unfunded liability, but the bigger impact is how much we're having to fund on an annual basis into the fund. It makes sense to pay early. So I guess the answer would be no, that it truly does have a positive impact to put those additional payments in early in the plan and reflect savings then on an annual basis all the way up through the 17 years. So we're looking, I think the decisions that were made by council in the workshop 2, budget workshop number 2, will not only, you won't see a lot of, I think, reduction in our annual payments in the initial years, but as we get into years 5, 6, and onward, you're going to start to see those annual payments come down, with the wild card being in the investments. And that's the part that right now what's happening with our market, the investments and what they're assuming as the assumed rate of interest for the public safety retirement system could add to the liability in the current year. But the more you can pay now, the better we're going to be in the long run.
Any additional questions?
Mayor, I would like to address Councilmember Orlando's statement as well about talking to the associations. I have done that in the past, and I will continue to do that. I will absolutely, we just don't necessarily want to get ahead of council and making sure that you're comfortable with the financial plan that's presented and the discussions that take place. But not recently, it's been a couple years now, but I did actually address the captains for the fire department and give an update there. And I can certainly do that again with both associations and the folks in the public safety area to make sure they understand the financial projections that we're running today.
Mayor.
Councilmember.
And I accept that, Dawn. Like I said, I've worked with you a long time. I know you're honorable and you're trying to get as much. But again, for some folks, it's the first time they saw this. And I don't know if it's getting ahead of the council to articulate what the thought process would be. And this is what we're thinking. Now, whether council approves it or not, we'd like your feedback. We'd like the understanding so that that fire captain gets the call, say, hey, I just heard they're extending the payment. Does that mean I'm still going to get paid? My pension plan affected? That's what I'm trying to say. We could, never be criticized for over-communicating and being out ahead of it versus behind it. That's what I'm trying to suggest. So hopefully we could be out ahead of it in the future and let those folks know what's going to happen, get their input, or if there is any input, or just maybe a download of the information, and then comes to us, and if we change it, we change it. But that's, still, we want to get them engaged as early as possible. So that's my contention right now.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Council, any additional questions related to our consent agenda that were not called in? All right. Again, as stated previously, I moved item number 13 to action. And no additional questions. A motion would be appropriate. Councilmember McClimus.
I motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 33,
Minus number 13.
minus 13 for action later.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor.
Mayor, if I may.
City Attorney.
Can I just ensure that that motion and the second includes the change to item number 3 that's on the dais? I think it was item number, did I get that wrong?
Was
Not
there a
item number 3.
change to item number 3?
I thought it was item 3.
Yes.
Item number 3 was Mr. Wakefield's. Are you talking about item number 10, perhaps, or I'm not sure.
I'm looking
I
to
don't-
Kevin, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure we had any from our, well, perhaps is that the street signs or what?
A single-page memo that was passed out for item number 3, an addendum memo. Inadvertently found an error in the legal description that was attached to the ordinance for that item. So
Okay.
we're just getting that legal description fixed.
All right. Would the motion maker like to amend his motion?
I'll amend the motion to include the memo item for item nominal change on item 3.
Okay, and a second?
And my second will also
All right.
accommodate that change.
Council, we have a motion and a second. We're legally on good grounds now. Thank you, City Attorney. Any additional comments related to this
Mayor,
vote?
yeah.
Councilmember Orlando.
So on item 33, I'll be voting no on that, not because I'm against not helping small businesses. I want to treat all businesses equally, and I'm a little concerned that, we have businesses that are going to gain advantage of this, but others may not be. I know this is an honorable attempt to try to help small businesses, but again, I would rather see us, as we go forward, on looking at these businesses in general as one hop, like we did with the signage, that helped all small businesses, and then to be looking at some businesses, but excluding others. So I don't want to get into that. What are you going to do for me now? Because you're giving a liquor license extension or, cutting the pay on that. So I'll be voting no on that one.
No is noted, and I thought it was a creative way to affect our small restaurants and bars. So I was certainly for that. So Councilmember Stewart.
Can we amend it to get rid of the fee altogether since it's redundant? And that way it would be just a no fee for.
There's a motion and a second on the floor right now that would accept that as is. So we would have to vote on that. So.
I'll withdraw.
Okay, thank you. Council, please vote. Mine is not responding. There you go.
Yeah, go ahead. I need yours again. For some reason, it didn't register your vote, Vice Mayor Lopez. Okay,
So
there
you have
go.
everybody's vote?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously with the exception of item number 33, which carries by majority.
right.
Councilmember Orlando voting no.
Thank you. Council, as I mentioned when we started, I pulled item number 13 for action. It wasn't that I had any issues or problems with this, but in a conversation with City Manager a little earlier, as many of you have heard by now, that CARES money was released mentioned yesterday at a press conference that I attended and participated in with the governor yesterday, in which $29.987 million were allocated for Chandler. And in order for us to to actually be able to spend that money, we need to appropriate that. Otherwise, we have the money and not the ability to spend it. So let me turn this over to City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And it was very exciting yesterday to finally get the news we are going to have some dollars coming down from the CARES Act. So I really do appreciate Mayor and Council and your push to try to get that at the governor's level and all the work that you've been doing on that. With that being said, we were already prepared tonight to make a presentation in regards to the tentative budget adoption. So Matt Dunbar, our budget manager, is going to begin that presentation, and he will be discussing what the mayor just spoke about at the end of the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens of Chandler. Tonight we'll give a brief overview of the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2020-21 and discuss the 2021 through 2030 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. We do want to note some additional key budget dates that are still coming up. The first is the final budget adoption and CIP adoption are scheduled for June 11th, and there will be a public hearing June 11th and 25th for the property tax levy for the 2020-21 year. While tonight's presentation is very high level, it's intended to give citizens a broad view of the budget and the CIP, but more detailed information can be found at chandleraz.gov/budget. All of the details can be found there. All right, so our budget theme this year is the Future's Insight, and it reflects our past and current leaders' vision for the community, making it the innovation and technology hub of the Southwest. We demonstrate that fiscal vision through our council's strategic goals and objectives, strong financial policies and capital improvement program development guidelines, providing multiple opportunities for engagement in the budget process for all who are interested. For example, the budget survey, our budget workshops, the budget live that we were able to have this year, as well as council meetings such as this to discuss the budget. To make it official, the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020 through 21 is $901,353,473. This amount is a 2.8% decrease from the current fiscal year adopted budget, which was just over $927 million. This includes all funds, operating, capital, debt service, and contingencies and reserves. And the budget maintains our strong financial position, a lean workforce, additional infrastructure improvements, and continues our strong reserves. We do take the current economic situation very seriously, and again realize that we may need to make additional changes during the fiscal year, as we cannot foresee exactly what the impacts of this pandemic will be. I wanted to quickly cover again some of those measures that have been put in place to generate one-time savings and additional policies in place to track revenues and expenditures and how we'll report out on those. Some of the expenditure reduction measures currently in place include strategically holding vacant positions, holding all travel and remaining training to the end of the calendar year, deferring fleet replacements, additional scrutiny on all purchases, and last, a strategic prioritization of our capital projects as discussed at the all-day budget briefing. Additionally, Mayor and Council, you have established a quarterly meeting to be held once data starts becoming available in order to have data-driven discussions regarding revenues and expenditures. This is to ensure that adjustments that need to be made throughout the year are made based on that data and ensure our spending does not exceed any revenues that are coming in. So for some operating budget highlights, the proposed 2020-21 operating budget is 6% less than the current fiscal year operating budget. As the vacancy savings rate has been increased, a number of decision packages were removed, contingencies and reserves were removed, and the council amendment reserve was also removed. We propose a slight property tax reduction in the current budget from 1.1281 to 1.1201 per $100 of assessed value. There are also no proposed changes to the transaction privilege tax rate, water, wastewater, reclaimed, or solid waste rates in the next fiscal year. The budget maintains our existing service levels. Funding is included for association commitments and general employee performance-based increases. And per discussion at Budget Workshop 2, An additional payment to the Public Safety Retirement System for $15 million remains in the budget, and payment will be held until we are sure revenues are coming in as anticipated. And the budget also maintains strong reserves, including our 15% general contingency reserve and the $10 million budget stabilization reserve. We did want to share some additional details of the highlights that we just mentioned. Number one, we wanted to talk about the $15 million additional payment to the public safety pension unfunded liability. And this graph represents how early payments will affect our liability balance over the payoff period. So on this graph, if you look at the yellow represents the additional payments, interest earned from those early payments, and one-time commitments to the unfunded liability over time. The blue shows the liability balance should we keep the repayment schedule discussed in Budget Workshop 2. And the blue and green combined represent what the fund balance would be should we not make those additional payments, with the green representing the difference. So as you can see, as we go throughout the fiscal year 36, the fund balance or the liability balance will be zero under our current plan, which is the blue. But if we were to not make those payments, we'd still have a $12 million liability at the end of the 36-month or the fiscal year 36. The other thing to note is the difference between the fund balance as you get out in length. Those balances in the green or at the bottom of the green section become quite significant as they drop. And that's because the required payment from the city of Chandler in those out years becomes significantly more in the out years if we don't front load those payments in the early section there. Additionally, we wanted to remind the citizens that Chandler has one of the lowest costs for providing essential services of all cities in the valley. As stated before, we have a slight reduction to the property tax rate and no planned increases in other rates that are indicated in this comparison, so we anticipate to remain very low in comparison to other cities. The study conducted by the city of Tempe in 2019 compared utility costs, sales tax, and property tax costs for a typical home, the average annual household costs, and Chandler was the second lowest at $1,664, significantly below the median, which is $2,038. And finally, we also wanted to isolate just those utility costs from the prior chart. So when you look at water, wastewater, and solid waste charges for the residents in the city of Chandler, we have the lowest utility rates in the valley. The second part of tonight's discussion is centered on the 10-year capital improvement program, or the CIP. As we look at Chandler's future and strive to maintain or improve the quality of life for our citizens, it's vital that we continue to provide well-designed and maintained infrastructure and amenities. The CIP continues Mayor and Council's priorities of maintaining existing infrastructure, finishing planned construction of parks and southeast arterial streets, limiting new projects that add operations and maintenance, while still addressing public needs. The plan also puts a higher emphasis on maintaining aging streets, parks, utilities, facilities, and technology infrastructure, as well as adding new requested projects such as Alma School Road, Veterans Memorial Park Phase 2, the first phase of Lantana Ranch Park, and the airport runway extension, to name a few. With the completion of several facility and equipment studies at our water and wastewater facilities, additional maintenance of existing infrastructure has been identified as a significant need, and those projects have also been added to the capital plan. And while the city develops a 10-year CIP as a roadmap for the future, only the first year, which is discussed on this slide, is appropriated and placed in the budget. Projects shown in years 2 through 10 are reevaluated every year, and those projects could move forward, be deferred, or be removed from the CIP depending upon funding availability, reassessed needs, or other considerations. When you look at the proposed CIP budget for fiscal year 2020-21, there's $345.8 million that's included, and it's made up of three components. The first is new project funding, $150.9 million of new projects. We have capital carry forward funding of $194.4 million. As you can imagine, very few capital projects actually begin in a fiscal year and end in the same fiscal year. So as those projects accumulate and we have additional spending needs, state law requires us that the unspent appropriation be reappropriated by council for the following fiscal year to finalize those projects. And then we also have a small lump sum contingency reserve of almost $500,000. It's $450,000. The fiscal year 2020-21 CIP is 2.9% or $9.9 million higher than the prior year's CIP, mainly due to new projects or projects moving up in the planned timeline. And the budget anticipates no bond sales during this year. When you look at the 10-year plan as a whole, the updated 2021 to 2030 CIP is $1.164 billion, which is 24% more than the 2020-2029 CIP. As mentioned on the prior slide, but worth mentioning again, this CIP continues a higher focus on maintaining existing infrastructure, which accounts for 70% of the increases, with the majority of that increase due to major water and wastewater facility and infrastructure maintenance needs. The 10-year capital plan does not project any increases to the secondary tax rate, but does capitalize on planned appreciation and new property growth. Although bond sales are anticipated during the 10-year plan, the estimated revenues from the property tax levy in future years is enough to cover the debt service needs for the needed debt financing. As we conclude with our last two slides this evening, we'd like to note that formulating this fiscal plan each year comes with numerous challenges and opportunities, and this year added a new level of complexity. The economy had its longest period of growth in history prior to COVID-19, and with all the uncertainty, maintaining service levels and quality infrastructure in the most cost-effective way will continue to be vital. As the budget is merely a spending plan, additional evaluations will take place during the year to evaluate any additional reductions should estimated revenues not come in as planned. Cost containment will continue to be a focus over the next year, but having the appropriation in the budget will allow us to be flexible should we start to see economic improvements, or should additional funds or grants be made available to assist during these troubling times like those we heard announced yesterday. With yesterday's AZ Cares announcement, we do though now need to add an additional decision to tonight's discussion. The recent announcement yesterday allocating dollars to those cities that did not receive federal CARES dollars now requires us to have legal appropriation to spend those dollars. There are a couple of options to appropriate these dollars tonight to make a determination on. The first is to utilize the majority of our 15% contingency reserve, which is already in the budget. If we were to do that, that would leave $4.9 million in contingency appropriation, and as you see there, our average usage is $7.5 million annually in contingency. So it would almost wipe out our entire contingency reserve, leaving not enough to cover our typical annual usage. The second is to add the $29.9 million to the tentative budget and to allow for the spending of those grant dollars. It's important to note, though, that once the tentative budget is adopted, we cannot increase the budget. We can only decrease it. So should that be the direction to increase the budget, we need to make that decision tonight, as we have filings that must be posted tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with Arizona Republic for the State Auditor General forms that must be filed. So option one would leave the budget at the same $901 million budget. Option two would add the $29 million, increasing the budget to $931 million. So instead of a 2.8% decrease from the current fiscal year budget, we would have a 0.46% increase from the current year's budget. Again, additional information on all this is available on our website, chandleraz.gov/budget, or by contacting the budget office. And with that, Mayor, we'll turn it over to you for any questions or comments.
So Matthew, with the contingency, that $7.5 million, I know that there are times, for example, where that comes from is like when Intel does a project and we have to pay it and then they pay it back. And we also have a lot more uncertainty this year, certainly with other types of things. So to truly be able to respond to normal draws upon our contingency fund, to have a contingency fund, if needed, existing, we would want to, and if we desire to spend and use for the community, our businesses or other purposes, the additional money, we would need to appropriate that. Is my statement correct?
Mayor, yes, that's correct. So really that contingency allows us to have flexibility. By utilizing the majority of that, we do lose a lot of the flexibility the current budget offers us. Should other grants or other funding sources be determined throughout the year, 6 months from now, another $15 million were to open up for us, we wouldn't have the contingency left to utilize those dollars. So it does take away some of the the options that we would have in the future. So to be, between the two options, flexibility is going with option 2, less flexibility is option 1, and what we can or can't do with those contingency dollars.
So even if additional funds come, whether from FEMA for replacement for, PPE or other expenses that would be allocated later, our budget would already be set, or if for some interesting chance that further dollars would come down from DC to allow us to spend, we would not be able to spend those as part of this budget either, because our budget is already allocated, correct?
Mayor, correct. As we get to that appropriation cap, we would not be able to allocate or spend any of those additional dollars. We do have some other reserves, depending on where those funds were coming from. We could utilize other reserves, but our main reserve that offers the most flexibility would be utilized primarily with the AZ CARES without adding additional appropriation to the existing budget or the tentative budget.
Council, questions? Councilmember Orlando.
So I understand what you're trying to do, and I get it. So, but my question to you is, what stipulations on this $30 million?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, currently the only stipulations are that we utilize our public safety payroll expenses to quantify the use of the $29.9 million. And once we can quantify that we utilize those funds between a certain time period, March 1st through December 30th of the current year, that we'll utilize at least $29.9 million, we can use those. The funds that we would have used for public safety would then be allocated through this, and we can use them for any purpose that council sees fit to utilize those for.
So, okay, so what I originally read on this bill, and again, I'm just going by what I read before, is that you have to show a clear path that this was over and above expenditures for COVID relations. Is that still true or not?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, according to the information that was posted today about this, it was very recent that they announced this, but today's information was that it does not have to have a direct correlation to COVID, that they assume that all public safety, whether it's police or fire, will have some COVID impacts throughout that time period of March 1st through December 30th. And so because there will be an impact, even if it doesn't impact one officer, but it does another, they are allocating that entire payroll for those periods to be an impacted payroll.
Okay, so let me make sure I clarify. That come from U.S. government, or does that come from the governor's office?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, that came through the governor's office.
So again, could the governor be wrong? And we're going to be stuck here? Or his analysis, not the governor personally, but his analysis of this be incorrect, and then we'll wind up spending this money and be able to have turned it back because it was, quote, illegally used? Not that we've had this issue already with the federal government, changing guidelines, putting guidelines, large business getting money, small business not getting money. I'm a little concerned about just saying, let's just put this, I'm okay with putting in the budget in order to allocate it, but then and then we turn around and we find out we can't use it. Does that then eliminate us from utilizing this for potentially small business programs, incentives like some cities are doing? Does it allow us not to use it for non-government agencies or NGOs that are helping homeless and poor and feeding and things like that? So I'm trying to weigh here what the issue is.
Mayor.
Councilmember, we will have the opportunity to have the discussion about how we want to spend that. That'll be, and we can defer some of that decision. This decision is really just to allocate it.
So again, I want to make sure we're being clear here. We're not going to take this $30 million and say it's for public safety and then have nothing left to be able to allocate for other areas.
Yeah. Mayor.
City Manager.
Thank you. Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, I will try to address the question as much knowledge as we have. Obviously, this was a direct allocation originally to the state from the CARES Act. There are requirements from the CARES Act, as the other cities in the state, 3, that received a direct allocation for this. The public safety piece is a method for us to get that into our grant fund, in its own fund, and then it will be up to the council, so long as you meet those overall federal guidelines for CARES Act, to allocate it as you see fit. And we'll be talking about that, as Mayor said, June 11th. But it is not directed to be spent on public safety. That was just the fastest mechanism to move that money from the state's and the governor's direction to the city. So then you all can make decisions about how you want to allocate it.
So why does it have to be put in the budget when other cities now are having approved their next year's budget, but yet they're allocating and spending some of this dollars? So why does it have to be put in the budget at all? Why can't it just stay out there as a funding mechanism for us to do some of these programs we want to do? I.e., like we did with the $800,000 we got from HUD, or was it FEMA, HUD or FEMA, I can't remember what it was.
CDGB.
CDBG funding, which wasn't included in the budget either, and we just allocated that.
Yeah, I'm going to let Dawn answer that question.
Thank you. Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, in order, no matter what funds you get from a grant or anything else, in order to spend them, you have to have legal appropriation to spend. We can get the dollars, we can put them in our bank account, but we can't actually write a check and spend those until we have legal appropriation. The 800,000 CDBG, we had to allocate existing appropriation from another location to there in order to actually spend those dollars. Otherwise, they would have sat there until we could actually identify those appropriations. So that is why we're recommending adding contingency. It will be there, it will appropriate those dollars and allow council then to make decisions at a later time on how to spend them in the new budget year.
I got that. Okay, that's, I just want to double check. We're on a level, we're not going to be, come down here, get an audit in 6 months from now and say I have to write a check for $29 million or whatever that number is going to be. Okay, and I do understand have to be allocated and appropriate. I get all that too. So, so what are the other cities doing right now? For instance, Phoenix with their money that they're already appropriating and putting out there, that they're using it from other funds from other areas?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, my guess is they probably had to identify existing appropriation and could spend up to that point, and then they'll probably then have to allocate additional dollars in the new year. They have a much larger contingency in a city the size of Phoenix, so they could do that. They could also hold or defer capital projects and use appropriation off of those to help spend. There's a lot of different ways that you can reallocate towards that purpose, but I would have to actually contact them to know exactly how they did that, but they would have to identify existing appropriation in order to spend those.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Who writes the check, Mayor? Do you write the check back to the governor? We have to get, not just kidding.
I have looked at some other states, and Texas, for example, is going to block grants, and there's other states that are, everyone seems to be unique about how they're doing that, and states that have already had a plan in place, I've not heard of any being challenged yet in terms of their distribution, so it does seem that there is a lot of grace or brevity given to governors and states to make up a plan. I know this one puts a lot more dollars into per capita cities. I think Texas is $54 per head. This is $114, for example, that is going directly to local municipalities. So but every state has come up with a different plan on how they're doing it. So.
Got it. And this is a good thing to have. I'm okay with that. I just want to double check we're
Good
doing that
questions.
here. We are.
Additional questions, Council? Councilmember Wong.
So you made two recommendations. Would you like to elaborate more about the pro and con of each options?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Wong, there are two recommendations. I would say that flexibility is always beneficial when you're dealing with uncertain times. And so, option two gives us the most flexibility of the two options. Really, option one, we do have we have existing contingency that we could tap into to fully fund the $29.9 million, but it does put us at risk of other funding sources and our existing needs that we currently have, as we typically use $7.5 million on average of those funds. So, option two gives us the most flexibility and allows us the most opportunity throughout the year as things change.
Thank you. Councilmember Rowe.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It sounds like we have two votes to take here. Is that correct?
One vote, I believe. Yeah.
At least you want to make another recommendation.
And then there's the,
This is the new budget, that is the budget that we're making a tentative adoption tonight. We'll be voting on that. And so there's just a
well, you
vote for
have
that.
option 1 and 2, and then you have the tentative budget.
No, this is, option 1 or 2 is entered into the tentative budget. So there's not a tentative budget and then voting on an option. Am I correct on that? Yeah. City Attorney?
Mayor, I think you can do it one of two ways. You can vote on the increasing the contingency and then on the tentative budget, or you can just vote on the tentative budget with the increase to the contingency if that's the desire of the council. So you can do it in one motion if that's how you want to proceed.
Councilmember McClymont.
I'd make a motion to approve action item number 13 with option 2 as a contingency. It'll allow for our flexibility, and we'll ultimately be making more decisions in upcoming council meetings on those dollars.
Thank you. All right, we have was that Councilmember Orlando the second? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any additional comments?
Mayor,
Councilmember Stewart.
I'm comfortable with we need to appropriate the funds. I'll be voting no on the budget until we get more sales tax data and revenue data, which will come in a little bit later. So we can still wait until the final, if things are coming in a little bit better than we expected, which I've heard that it is, then I'll feel more comfortable in voting for the budget.
So you'll be voting no, is what you're saying? On
Yes,
this?
sir.
Okay. Councilmember Rowe.
Yeah, I also agree with the special appropriation, and but I'm going to vote no on the budget. Continue to watch what happens. 40 million people applied for first-time jobless benefits, and there are many stories out there that are bearish, I guess is a good way to say it. And I think giving some of our employees a pay raise at this time when people are losing their jobs, losing their homes, losing their businesses, I think the optics are bad. And so I will be voting no.
Okay. Any additional? Councilmember Orlando.
Mayor, I just want to clarify one thing. I've been hearing this throughout the community over the last month and a half. City Manager, the budget you presented to us in April contains a bunch of elements of which at any one time this council could say no to a particular item. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, that is correct. I mean, there are many things in here. Many of these things have to come back to council for separate votes as the year goes forward. But we can certainly have discussions about any of these if council wants to do something different in terms of those individual items within the year.
So just to be clear, I'm voting yes for this, but there are a few items that I believe in this budget we need to further discuss and move forward as a council or not. But again, I think we have to, like any household budget, we have to say, this is what we need this year. Now, whether we take that trip, whether we buy the new car, whether I, get two gifts for a birthday or one, those are decisions you make as you go along. And I just want to be clear. So so we're good on that. Thank you.
Yes, that is correct.
And council, we will be, again, August and November and February and whatever 3 months after that is, we will have certain insertion points intentionally with this budget. In August, we'll have a better sense, and I think decisions that we will be making is based upon revenue, and we will have the opportunity to hear from staff and to hear where we're at and work with staff to make whatever. But this, again, gives us the ability to appropriate at a maximum budget. And if we need to cut back and respond to further economic duress, certainly, as Councilmember Orlando stated, we certainly have that option to do so. So this gives us the maximum that we can spend. All right, council, please vote.
Motion carries by majority with Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Rowe voting no.
All right, thank you, council. So we have two discussion items on our agenda tonight. Item number 34, council direction related to Chandler City Code Section 11.3, allowing consumption of beer and wine in designated recreational areas and designation of the west side of Dr. A.J. Chandler Park as a public recreation area. Councilmember Orlando.
Mayor, I just had some questions on this and want to, I don't know who's going to address it from staff.
Yeah, Kim.
Oh, great, there she is. So Kim, I understand what we're doing here, and I know, again, it goes back to what I talked about on item 33 previously. I don't like picking winners and losers. I don't like saying one part of town could do something, but the other part of town can't, or one business gets a break, a tax break or license break, but one doesn't. I want to be as equal as possible to everyone. So I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, there's only there's maybe a misconception here, but can Serrano's and the marketplace as well as courthouse be involved with this program?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, anybody in the community and outside the community can take advantage of the designation of Dr. A.J. Chandler Park. We cannot discriminate between a downtown business or a non-downtown business. We also can't discriminate who brings food or alcohol into the park. So that is open for all of our residents.
Okay, that's one misperception out there. So can I ask you to do us a favor and reach out to those business owners and tell them they're obviously invited to participate in this? I know Serrano's is not open yet, but they will be next week, and of course the other two others. So I appreciate that. That's a miscommunication. The other question I've had is, and I was down there a couple of times, doesn't seem like many people are out there at 110 degrees, and I get it. But how did we involve the police department on this issue, and what was their response? And I know the chief's here too. If he wants to address, he can address as well.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, through our downtown redevelopment division, we started a downtown reopening group. And this group was made up of all of the individuals that touch the downtown, including Commander Fayen and the bike team as well. So when we went through the entire process, they were involved in it. We talked about all of the concerns that we would have. We looked at hours, what we thought appropriate hours would be, how we would deal with educating all of the downtown businesses so that they made sure that the residents knew what was allowed and not allowed. And then over the weekend, last weekend was our first weekend, we did have the bike patrol going through, talking to the businesses, talking to those who partook in those activities. And we had a very favorable first weekend. We had about 50 individuals partake the first night on Friday night, and about 70 individuals take advantage of that area on Saturday night. We know that the heat is a factor, but the intent of this program was really, if you decide to go out to eat and you go to a restaurant and you don't feel comfortable, it's a little busier than what you thought it was going to be, maybe there's not masks, whatever that option might be, instead of turning around and going home, they can get food and they can take it to the park and enjoy it in a safe manner.
So was DCCP and the chamber involved with this decision-making process?
The DCCP was part of the committee itself. The chamber was not part of the committee, but we had constant communication and they knew what was going on as well.
So I guess I'm going to ask the police chief. I'm going to put you on, Chief. I just want to make sure. I know the bike patrol is thin. They're a mighty team. So,
what was your question?
The question is, your bike patrol is stretched thin. Are we okay with? Do we have enough backup if something should happen and someone decides to drink too much beer or wine, or an officer potentially has to go down there because someone's complaining about social distancing? And are we comfortable that we have the right solution set and skill sets and training to handle those issues?
But we do have the skill set and training certainly to handle most issues, certainly. Based on what we saw last weekend, certainly there were no arrests, no citations. Everyone was compliant, and people seemed to be enjoying themselves in the park. So we're ready for contingencies of all sorts, but based on what we saw last week, it is certainly something within the means of normalcy that we would be able to handle.
Okay. All right, thanks, Chief. I just, again, want to make sure we're not potentially putting your officers in a position, again, just adding more to their responsibilities without, or actually putting them in a potential conflicting way or conflict that they normally wouldn't encounter.
Right. Well, and I certainly appreciate that. We would be there. We are there to enforce the law. So if we saw issues of underage drinking or if there was a disturbance, obviously we would respond to that. But we are not out there policing any type of social distancing, if that's what you're referring to. Those are guidelines, and it's not something that we are enforcing by any means.
But you are educating.
We are educating just like we do throughout the entire community every day.
Good, appreciate it. So I have a final question for the city attorney. Thank you, Chief. So I understand permits and I understand, so someone gets inebriated, crosses the street, gets hit by a car, or gets in a car and hits somebody, liability.
If I may, Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, that's a really tough one to answer because in order to establish liability, someone would have to show the city was negligent. Merely opening up the park to allow for responsible dine-in with a can of beer or some wine, we're not negligent in that. We're not responsible for serving. We're not over-serving. That is the individual's, within the individual's control. So I think it would be very hard to establish liability. If we were somehow negligent in operating our park, that's where the liability would come through. But I don't see that happening merely by allowing people to come in and dine and have their drinks that they purchased from somewhere.
So normally, again, I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to make sure, again, this is properly vetted as much as possible. So I start at one bar, I grab a drink, I go to another bar, I grab a drink, and another bar, grab a drink, and I become inebriated. Normally, we would say to that bar, hey, you served this person, your liquor license could be suspended, and we've had that, I'm sure we've had those issues. Were we putting a lot on the third or fourth or fifth bar that night?
Again, if I may, Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, that can happen now, and those liquor license holders have that responsibility now to make sure that they are not serving someone who is obviously intoxicated. If they go out and drink in the park and they happen to take, 3 or 4 or 5 drinks, whatever they take, and they get inebriated there, again, the city's not the one selling that alcohol to them, it's not making that alcohol available to them, other than we're making a place available where they can sit and eat and have those drinks.
Okay.
So I think it is, someone would be very hard-pressed to establish negligence.
And again, this was an honorable thing. I think we're trying to help businesses. I think I said that earlier. I'd rather see things that are more citywide than just picking, because what about the west side, the north side, the east side? We don't have an A.J. Chandler Park in those areas. So again, it was an honorable attempt, and innovative, no problem with that earlier, Mayor, like I discussed earlier. But again, I would hope we would look at a more innovative approach citywide to help everyone out. So, okay, I feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Kim, I just want to say thanks. What an innovative, great idea. And John, if John's still here, thank you to John for pulling this together. I will tell you, it is the talk of the town. It ranked as the #1 thing to do this weekend for AZ Central's What to Do This Weekend event. So kudos to you and your team for pulling that together. I know I've spoken with a number of the restaurant owners and DCCP leadership, and they were delighted with the outcome. I think people are being responsible. It does allow those folks that do feel nervous about being in crowds to grab and go and be comfortable in their lawn chair or whatever chairs they find, and enjoy the great food and the great environment that we are creating in downtown Chandler. So I wanted to thank you for that. And then I also wanted to let you know that this is a great example of self-governance. We can do tough things in Chandler, and people can be amongst one another in a place like AJ Chandler Park and socially distance and do all those things and take care of themselves. And I think this is a great example of giving people a little bit more liberty in a time when most cities are taking it away. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Ditto to all of that, Kim. Great job. And I'll say, I think this should be something that we should be trying out for the future. The thought that this might end in 4 weeks because the governor put it all to rest, thankfully for the governor to do that, but I think this is a great type of thing. And should it be the downtown? No. To Councilmember Orlando's point, it shouldn't be. We should be looking for opportunities to help people do business all over Chandler. And we're a little slow on the uptick on this. We need to get the person with the blue hair and the dry eraser marker and saying, these are the great things that we should do, and come up with the most bizarre, long list, and we should adopt some of this stuff. And so I'm happy to see this. I love to see more and more stuff like this that really does make us innovative. And so thank you, City Manager. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Wong.
Just want to say something a little bit unusual, personal experience. When I was an elementary elementary school student, the teacher in the school told me, hey, don't drink or eat when you are walking outside. And there's no punishment, no real punishment, but we do have student police. If they saw you on the campus or even outside the campus, they will write down your name because everybody have a number, there's your student number, and then report to the school. And then the next day or the next week, teacher will call you to his or her office, say, hey, somebody report you. But when you get to become a junior high student or a high school student, nobody care about this anymore. So I was very surprised that we have a law saying that you cannot carry a beer when you are walking on the street. I was very, very surprised. I think that's really self-governance things. Of course, we don't want to see somebody was drunk on the street. Of course, we don't want to. But I just feel, how come we have that kind of law that we are asking our police to enforce it or something? It's pretty difficult to enforce it. And so I don't mind that we open an area that allow people with those kind of liberty, and definitely people need to be responsible for their own behavior. And of course, we are helping business too. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Kim, I wanted to say I use this as an example. When I was with the governor yesterday at his press release about an innovative approach to help bring people back into businesses and to allow, with this approach, to still provide social distancing, and well received there as well. People had heard the press, as Councilmember Stewart said, it was a bit of the talk of the town. And so again, I also appreciate ideas like this, that particularly in helping with the social distancing and allowing our restaurants and businesses to be able to extend their premise in such a way to bring in more customers. So I also want to extend my kudos to you and your staff and to the city for this idea. Related, City Manager, I also spoke to several other mayors over the last month about us reviewing quarterly. And several, and I'm sure you've worked through city managers, but I know several other mayors have brought that back to their cities as well. And they've adopted that idea as well as an opportunity to move forward and also be able to exercise changes as necessary. So again, I as we've just approved a budget, I tentative budget. I applaud you on giving us the options to be able to put the brakes on if necessary, yet still intend to move ahead. Any additional comments on this discussion? Seeing none. Council, we've got one more discussion item, number 35, regarding the I Choose Chandler Business Support Campaign. Again, Councilmember Orlando.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, this is one of those things that popped up, and I just want to make sure it's properly vetted, discussed publicly. Who's going to be presenting here?
Micah.
So I understand what we're doing. This is the old Shop Chandler. We've done several iterations of this type of activity in the past, and they've been great. I guess my concern is my question is, what's the messaging being done here? How does it instill consumer confidence? Because that's really the issue we're at state right now, is consumer confidence. And so the messaging, the consumer confidence, are we balancing the right safety message with the message of, getting folks helping engage and getting back to business as business should be getting back to?
Yes, through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, you're absolutely right. We're in a period of consumer confidence. Majority of our economy is based on consumption, right? And so what this campaign intends to do is really convey to Chandler residents and even people outside of Chandler, when they are comfortable to engage in commerce, whether it's going to their local grocery store, their local hardware store, or getting back into restaurants and bars, Chandler's going to be here for you. Our businesses are going to be here for you. And we want you to do it in a safe way. And really, that's what we're looking to convey throughout this campaign is it's up to you, but we want you to do it safe. We want you to enjoy our businesses in a safe manner and also come out and support them, because without them, we lose a lot of our identity. And this is one of the best things we can do to help catalyze our economic recovery, is to get consumption to occur throughout our businesses.
So what's the budget for this? Do we have a budget on this, or is this something we've already had baked into advertising?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, the money that we're going to use for this campaign has already been appropriated as part of the economic development and tourism budgets. We've had some savings because we haven't obviously been traveling, doing sales missions and that. So we're going to take those existing resources and put it towards this campaign.
And how much is that?
We're looking at about $75,000 right now.
Okay. All right. So what I heard you say is that this message will be combine a safety message, a consumer confidence message when you're ready. The example I think you gave the other day was, hey, instead of ordering, I don't know, something, hardware from, a catalog or calling someone catalog, well, online, I'm sorry.
Dating.
Boy, did I date myself, so, man. Okay, I'll shut up.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, you're absolutely right.
Call your Home Depot, go pick it up, or have, that's something that's the type of message we're sending out.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, exactly. Pick up, drop off. A lot of our businesses have been very flexible in the way they can get customers. And, part of our responsibility as citizens within our community is to really help support those businesses to get out there and engage in commerce in a safe manner when they're ready. The only real way to move us forward is to lift aggregate demand. And if people are choosing to shop Chandler, that's really what we're looking to get out of this campaign, to really show our business community that Mayor and Chandler City Council really understands the challenges they're facing. So we're going to put some city resources into elevating this message, really help them understand what it means to shop local. For every $100 you spend at a local business, $43 of that remains in the economy. And that circulates around. So if you go to your local florist as opposed to an online florist, more money stays in the economy, as opposed to if you were to shop outside your local economy, only $13 stays in the economy and circulates. So there's a lot of trickle-down effects that we benefit from as a community when we really support our local businesses and engage in commerce locally.
So I guess my last question, Mike, this all sounds good. I kind of like what we're going. The messaging is the right messaging. We'll be engaging the businesses. I saw a couple really good YouTube videos, how a couple of the businesses took, it was another state, but they took a nice view of what they were going to do, how the safety measures they entailed. It was a kind of nice inside look, and you felt a little comfortable, thinking that they really cared about, the safety and safety of the guest. Is that something you're going to be looking at, like reaching out to the business communities and organizations and kind of getting their feedback? So again, we're trying to build consumer confidence here. So by me getting up there saying, go shop Chandler, or you getting up there, got Chandler, that's great. They like me, they like you, they don't like me, they don't like you. But if I got some business owners saying, this is what we're doing, this is the message we should be looking at. I'm just asking you, that's something you're looking at doing?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, absolutely. So part of the campaign, we have a couple of different mediums we're looking to engage in: traditional media, print media, video. And CAPA staff is all over this. They are engaging with our local businesses. This is really going to be a ground up campaign. So we'll engage with large stakeholder organizations, specific shopping centers such as Macerich, Casa Ploma, Pollock Properties, also get their buy-in. And through that content creation, showing how commerce can occur in a safe manner, to your point.
Okay, that's the key right now. Let them show us how it's going to be. They're taking the steps to be safe.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Good discussion.
Any additional conversation with us?
Mayor?
Councilmember Stewart.
Real quick, will you be working with like DCCP, Chamber, the other groups around the community that sort of are all coalesce around this business community and kind of move this forward? Will they all be included as well?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, absolutely. I mean, this is really a partner type of organization. So whether it's DCCP, the Chandler Chamber of Commerce, the specific shopping centers, as well as our nonprofits and service agencies, we're looking to engage with them to really help amplify this message, to really catalyze the community to become engaged. Because at the end of the day, this is really designed to support our businesses. So I would anticipate a lot of buy-in from our partner organizations.
All right. Thank you, Micah.
Thank you.
That concludes this discussion. I do have one unscheduled public appearance to be read into the records. I will do so. This is from Sam Katruzula at 3081 East Beechnut Place, Chandler, Arizona 85249. Greetings, Chandler City Council. I am here on behalf of Chandler residents, and more specifically, the residents of Belmont community. I am the HOA president. We request your support for a no engine braking ordinance. I've discussed this with your traffic engineer. He was very helpful in providing information on the council's position. My understanding, this was reviewed several years ago, and the council decided against moving forward with an ordinance. Experiencing this disturbance is simple to experience. Spend some time listening to the traffic on Arizona Avenue or Gilbert Road from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. You will hear trucks braking one after another. Engine braking is not a requirement to slow the truck down. Brakes can be applied to avoid this loud disruptive noise. Thank you. We request you reconsider the ordinance to not permit engine braking. Thank you, Sam Cutruzella. And council, this is unscheduled, so no comments are appropriate with this, but I would ask city manager to have the appropriate person reach out to him and further this dialogue.
Certainly, Mayor, we'll do that.
Council, next on our agenda tonight is current events. I'll start. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to join Governor Ducey, as I mentioned previously, and participate in the press event where he announced the plan to distribute that $441 million in direct flexible funding to local cities, towns, and counties that did not receive the direct funding earlier this year from the federal government. I appreciate the governor seeking us out, listening to myself and other mayors and councils. And council, I appreciate the work that a month ago that we put together. And it took us a couple days to get there, but I heard very positive comments from the governor's office concerning the letter and the tone that it set and requesting. I do believe we're perhaps the only city council that could actually get everyone to sign a letter to the governor such as that. As you know, Chandler was the largest city to not receive CARES Act dollars. And with the governor's plan, we've allocated, as we put into our budget, nearly $30 million. So I'm directing, although this was mentioned a little bit earlier, I am directing city manager and staff to come back to council with recommendations to also reach out to our community and of how we can best utilize these funds. And we will gather together on June 11th in a work session. I see this as a preliminary session rather than a final allocation in which there might be some things that we are appropriate to do right away, but Council, as we know, this very possibly likely, would not want to expend all this as the impact of COVID-19 might be returning later this year and a flu season. But we'll have that option to discuss this on that particular day. So I do want to thank you, Council, for being strong advocates for this funding and for other items during this pandemic. Our voices were heard. These dollars will greatly benefit our community, our families, individuals, and our businesses in our community. Secondly, I referred to this the last time, but this has to do with our Chandler Job Fair. Next week, registration will open for the Chandler Job Fair. So save the date, June 23rd at 10 a.m. for a virtual kickoff. The event will run through July 10th. Job seekers will be able to view hundreds of available positions and speak with the hiring managers and recruiters from some of Chandler's top employers directly online. You can pre-register on our website for more information. I want to thank our partners, Arizona at Work, Pipeline AZ, Career Connectors, and Best Companies AZ for working together to make this a successful event. We already have a great response of people that have already signed up for this, and we look forward for this to increase. I think we certainly found a niche that will allow us to serve our community with these resources. Councilmember Stewart.
Mayor, thank you very much, and it's great news as it relates to the CARES Fund funding that's coming to the city, and I'm sure that the city management as well as other folks will do well with trying to find a place for that to land. Well, I just sent my last child off. She graduated yesterday. I picked up her diploma, or she picked up her diploma. It was quite an emotional day for me as I've got no more children in high school, but I wanted to take a point of privilege here and wish my daughter Quinn the very best of luck. She graduated cum laude, or I don't know, I was never even close to that, but she graduated with really good honors, and she's heading to ASU WP Carey, and so we're super proud of her. But throughout the week, downtown Chandler, the historic square, will be lit up to celebrate Chandler Unified School Districts. And I just recently heard Corona just joined into that. Seton just joined into that. And so, so the square will be lit nightly from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., changing colors to represent the 9 high schools and Seton in the Chandler Unified School District. The city will post photos each night, and you've probably already seen those on Instagram and Facebook. And the public is encouraged to share their photos with the hashtag #LoveChandler. So congratulations to all the graduates in 2020, and all the best of luck to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, kudos to you for pushing the Arizona CARES dollars into Chandler's corner, $29.9 million. I know myself and other members on council were doing what we could to get our share of the federal money train, and so kudos to you. The City of Chandler's Development Services Department would like the public's input regarding draft amendments to city code. Input is needed for multiple city code chapters relating to zoning, signs, and civil engineering standards. Comments and questions are welcome through Wednesday, June 3rd, and can be directed to city staff within the Development Services Department. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So the summer is coming, as we all can tell. It's starting to get a little hot under the collar for everyone. Pools are opening up in some places, and I know a lot of people are using pools in their homes. But not only do we in the summer relax, but we also need to read, especially with the children out there that haven't spent as much disciplined time at school. We as parents need to make sure our children continue to read. So as part of that, the Chandler Public Library Summer Reading Challenge for children from ages 4 to 12 begins June 1st. The theme this year's reading challenge is Imagine Your Story, emphasizing the importance of reading at an early age. Participants are encouraged to read 20 minutes a day. Readers will earn points for reading physical or electronic books, including graphic novels, my favorite, or listening to audiobooks, my second favorite. Additional points are earned for attending virtual programs and completing online challenges. Participants are encouraged to start logging their reading beginning on June 1st. Prizes can be collected from the Chandler Public Library locations in August. And happy reading. And the website is posted there. I also wanted to add in also congratulations. My son also graduated this year. So congratulations to all of those seniors out there in all of the high schools in Chandler and across the state and nationwide. It was definitely a different graduation. We wound up seeing my son's name read out on the on a YouTube channel since they posted it. And it definitely was a different one. The speeches were still good. It was a good commencement, and I do appreciate Chandler Unified and all the other schools around to actually put forth an effort to at least recognize their students. And I know some are working towards a live graduation, possibly later in the summer. But congratulations, it's well deserved for those that made it. Good luck in the real world. Have fun.
And Vice Mayor, I understand the reading programs also, adults can participate for some pretty sweet prizes as well?
I do believe so. There is no, well, it says for ages 4 to 12, but I believe, I don't know if it kicks them out on the website, but let's see.
All right.
You can test that.
I will. We could do a council reading challenge here.
Oh, wow. Well, audiobooks, I'm in. Audiobooks count. So.
I thought I read that there was actually whether lemonade tickets or even state park passes for adults, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? So this we could easily do a council challenge here. So I'm in.
All right, just no picture books.
Graphic novels count. It says graphic novels count.
Councilmember Wong.
So we are slowly open up the city, and downtown farmers market will return to Dr. A.J. Chandler Park West next Saturday, June 6th. Will be run from 7 a.m. to 9:30. Again, COVID-19 is still here. So we would like to remind you about all the safety precautions. Maintain the social distance of 6 feet. And so vendors and customers will also have the guidelines in place, protect themselves. And yeah. So for more information, please visit downtownchandler.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wong. Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. As usual, I want to give my shout out to our public safety folks. You guys are out there working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of us are thinking of you when you're out there doing that, and we appreciate it, and so thank you. So on a more fun side of all of that, the Chandler Center for the Arts is introducing a new series, and it's called CCA Anywhere. And so they're having some online performances for viewers, so you can watch it on your computer or your phone, wherever you might be. So all you have to do is go to the Facebook or Instagram pages of the CCA, the Chandler Center for the Arts, and check out some of their performances. That's occurring every Thursday through June at 7 p.m. So check it out.
Councilmember Orlando.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thank you. Well, you know, wait a minute, I will say something. Since we're all graduation, my catalog, I have a son, my middle boy, Anthony, graduated Georgetown, his master's degree. So shout out to him. It was a virtual ceremony as well. So actually it was kind of nice. It was real fast. So.
City Manager.
Nothing else tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Council. Good meeting.